Donald Trump sparked a major battle this year with his explicit push for Republican gerrymandering, triggering a domino effect of Republican and Democratic states redrawing their congressional maps. In fact, more states have carried out voluntary mid-decade redistricting this year than had done so in the last half-century combined. However, after things initially looked pretty bleak for the Democrats, a series of wins from California to Virginia have raised their hopes that they can basically cancel out any newly drawn Republican gains at next year's midterms. And some observers have even started wondering if the Trump-led gerrymandering effort could actually backfire. So in this video, we're going to explain the current state of the redistricting battle, why things might be looking better than expected for Democrats, but why the saga is also far from over. The next issue of our magazine, Too Long, is coming out soon, with this issue focusing on realignment in the Middle East, discussing how recent events fundamentally reshape the region. Pre-order your copy or subscribe by clicking the link in the description. Let's start with some important definitions though. Firstly, redistricting is the process of redrawing boundaries of seats in the US House of Representatives. Now, redistricting typically happens at the beginning of each decade, following the census, and aims to shift boundaries to account for changes in population. This process is carried out by the states, with different methods and rules in different parts of the country. But sometimes the redistricting process can get drawn out through the decade due to prolonged legal battles. The other term to know is gerrymandering, which refers to the drawing of electoral boundaries to favour one party or group over the other. It's sometimes described as politicians choosing their voters instead of voters choosing their politicians. Anyway, when it comes to the story today, let's start in Texas, where this redistricting wave really started, with encouragement from Trump, who urged Republican-led states to engage in a rare mid-decade redistricting to boost the Republicans' chances of retaining House control at next year's midterm elections. The new Texas map, drawn up by Texan Republican lawmakers and approved in August, gives the Republicans 5 likely pickup opportunities. And for those wondering, yes, we will come on to the legal challenge later. Other Republican-led states have heeded Trump's call too. In both North Carolina and Missouri, lawmakers approved new maps that should give the Republicans an extra seat in each state's congressional delegation. Meanwhile, in Ohio, which has been undergoing a court-mandated mid-decade redistricting, separate from the Trump-driven wave, the state's bipartisan redistricting commission managed to agree on a new map that makes 2 Democratic-held districts more favorable for the Republicans. Now, this could have been worse for the Democrats, as the agreement prevents a more aggressive gerrymander by Ohio's Republican-dominated legislature. So that puts our current tally at an estimated +9 for the Republicans. But the Democrats have managed to shrink this gap. In response to Texas's gerrymandering, California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom pushed ahead with Proposition 50, a retaliatory gerrymandering of California's congressional districts, which aimed to offset Texas's map by targeting 5 Californian seats held by Republicans. This was overwhelmingly approved by Californians in a referendum this month, with the new boundaries set to be used at next year's midterms through to 2030, after which redistricting power will revert back to an independent commission. Then, just last week, a curveball came out of reliably red Utah, which has been in the midst of its own separate redistricting battle for a few years now. Essentially, a judge ruled last week that the Republican-drawn map violated non-partisan redistricting standards that had been approved by Utah voters in 2018. She ordered the use of a new map that, rather than splitting the populous Salt Lake County across 4 districts, as was previously the case, keeps it almost entirely within 1 district, which should be an easy Democratic pickup, given Kamala Harris won it by some 24 points last year. So the range of maps, as passed by each state so far, sets up 6 potential Democratic pickups to the Republicans' 9. But unsurprisingly, this redistricting wave has sparked a blitz of legal challenges, which means that this tally is far from settled. Most dramatically, on Tuesday, a federal court in Texas preliminarily blocked the new Republican-favored map, with a Trump-appointed judge calling it a likely racial gerrymander. For context, federal courts can't intervene in partisan gerrymandering, but can in racial gerrymandering, which is illegal. So for now, Texas's 5 new Republican pickups have been wiped out, though the state will appeal to the Supreme Court. A similar case is being heard in North Carolina too. Democrats could also block the new Missouri map, at least for now, with a petition that would stall the map's introduction beyond the midterms, so voters have a chance to weigh in on it in a referendum next year. On the flip side, the Trump administration has joined a lawsuit challenging California's new map for alleged racial gerrymandering, with a hearing due in a couple of weeks. In Utah too, Republicans vowed to appeal the new map. The point is, a lot of this is up in the air at the moment, but the fact that there's a chance that Democrats end up with more pickups than Republicans, or even that the gap is only a couple of seats, is remarkable given how this started. In further good news for the Democrats, their sweeping victories at this month's off-year elections seem to have stalled redistricting efforts in other Republican-led states, including Indiana and Kansas, where a number of Republican lawmakers are, much to Trump's frustration, defying the president's push. Perhaps for several reasons, but probably mostly out of fear that hastily redrawing maps in their favour could end up backfiring, a phenomenon known as Dummymandering. Essentially, when a party gerrymanders and carves out some new pickup opportunities, they risk making their incumbents in other seats more vulnerable by moving reliable voters into different districts. If said party spreads its support too thin, it can end up accidentally losing seats, especially in elections when there's a swing against said party. Some Republicans fear that the gerrymandering gamble could backfire at next year's midterms, given that incumbent parties usually perform poorly in midterms, and that the Democrats had a very good night at the off-year elections early this month, raising their hopes of a 2026 blue wave. Nevertheless, other Republican-led states may push ahead with redistricting regardless, including Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis backs the idea. But even then, Democrats in Virginia, who won a sweeping victory at the state's elections this month, are moving forward with a plan to redraw the Virginia map, providing the Democrats with additional potential gains. However, overshadowing all of this is the Supreme Court, which could trigger a political earthquake by upending landmark civil rights-era laws. In the pending Louisiana v. Calais case, the court is considering the constitutionality of Section 2 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which protects against maps that dilute the voting power of minority groups, such as black communities in the South. If the Conservative majority court strikes down Section 2 of the VRA, it could kickstart an even more aggressive wave of gerrymandering by opening the door for Southern Republican-led states to revisit their maps and redraw so-called majority-minority districts, which mostly vote for Democrats, out of existence. Whether it rules in time to affect next year's midterms or not, if the court does hollow out the VRA, it would have a profound impact far beyond 2026. When a story like this breaks though, the headlines aren't just fast, they're fragmented. Depending on where you get your news, you might be seeing a completely different version of the same events. We can see that there are 76 sources currently reporting on it, with most of the coverage coming from the centre. If we dive a bit deeper, we can see that the left is framing it as Trump trying to blackmail the states, while the right focuses on the objective of securing 2 additional GOP seats. We're able to get such a detailed analysis thanks to our sponsor, Ground News. If you're overwhelmed by the amount of outlets and stories you're seeing online, Ground News has the solution for you, as they expertly collect and merge thousands of articles into one easy-to-access place, finally giving you an effortless way to consume news and digest media bias. And it doesn't even end there. Ground News offers you comprehensive breakdowns into the ownership, bias distribution, and factuality of each article, allowing you to dive even deeper into every story. For example, if you're worried about how much you can trust what's being said about a certain event, with a click of a button you can filter and sort every story by their factuality level, helping you easily grasp the reliability of each outlet. It's not just the stories we see that shape the narrative though, it's the ones that we don't. Ground News' blind spot feed is the only feature that shows you stories being ignored by one side of the political spectrum, helping you to break out of your bubble and spot what you might have missed. To give you an idea, here we can see a story on Texas Senator Ted Cruz setting the stage for a 2028 presidential run, which would have been completely buried if you leaned left, as it's mostly being reported by right-leaning outlets. Ground News doesn't just feed you stories based on your algorithm though, it also allows you to see everything the other side might not want you to. Ultimately, that's why we're partnering with them to give you 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. All you have to do is subscribe through the link in the description, go to ground.news/TLDR or scan the QR code on screen, and you'll be supporting an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.